This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I hope everyone online is able to hear my voice and see my screen. Can anyone please
Yes,
confirm?
yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, any questions, guys? Anyone, any questions that I can take before we can get started? So, on Monday, no, on Tuesday, sorry, we were looking at things like how to create a storage account, how to create a container inside a storage account, and things like what is private, blob, and container level access of a container. And if your storage account is in a private access mode, how do you access the blob within a container using something called as a shared access signature? So we generated something called as a shared access signature, and from the browser, we were able to go ahead and open up the blob out here as such. Again, we are also looking at what are the types of blobs, and we said it is block, blob, page, and then something known as an append blob out here to understand what are the different things out here. Again, we said block is the very common type of the blob. Page blob is for VHD information. Append blob is for log information out here, and etc. So we are just categorizing the blobs in multiple categories, and we went ahead and uploaded a couple of things out here as such. So any questions till here that I can take? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till here?
Sir,
Good, please.
yesterday class explained public access an
Yes, yes,
option,
correct.
sir.
Hmm.
In these options, blob blob access control. Acha,
Okay.
tell me this concept.
On blob access control, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so firstly, I'll create a storage account. I do not have a storage account today. I'll create that and I'll also explain that while creating it out. So yes,
Yes,
blob access, yes,
sir, difference between blob access control and
container access
container.
levels. Yes,
Uh,
I will explain that once again on what is the difference between blob and container access level out here. Yes, any more questions? I'll take that while creating the storage account. Any more questions here? Okay. So let us go ahead, create a resource group and then create storage account inside that and then relook at the concept today and let's extend the knowledge a little further. Again, I'll just come back today, directly create the storage account, create no storage accounts to display. Neither I have a resource group. So what I'll do is I'll first create a resource group. I'll say demo storage RG and I'll say here it is demo store RG, demo store account ABC, something like this, so that the name is unique. I'll just go ahead take this account in a region called East US2. This is the region that I'm taking. Again, the name, the region, and the performance type. These are something, or these are the properties that cannot be changed. I'll say performance is standard. I'm good with that. I'll start with LRS as my option. The rest I'm leaving it. I'll say review and create this out. Again, if I do not mention it, the access tier of the storage account will be by default a hot storage account access. It'll be sitting in a storage account with a tier called hot out here. And once I create it, the storage account will be created and later I'll go ahead and create the container inside the storage account. I'll create, let's say, one of the container called test container. We'll upload the data and to address a question, we'll see what is the difference between a blob access level and a container access level. Let's understand that a little further to explain what exactly that really means out here as such. So let's give it one quick minute out here to go ahead and create the storage service. And once it's in place, we'll see what or we'll see how do you, let's say, do the operations out here and so on and so forth. So let's give it a second and let's go into the storage right now. And into the storage, I'll go into data storage into something called containers. to hold all the unstructured data, and I'll say create a container, and I'll say test container out here. Again, the question here is that what is the difference between blob and container access level? If I give a container access level, what it does is that it will allow you to read the container data, or it will allow you to read the data inside the container, which is nothing but the blob, plus the properties of the container. Meaning, if you give someone, let's say, your storage account access, just a second. Okay. Let me put people on mute. Guys, please stay on mute if you're not talking. This will disturb the class out here. Okay. So this is what I was telling, is that if you put it at a container level access, there are a couple of properties on the container, like metadata, like the properties of the container itself. This can be read by using a container level access. That's what it is telling you out here. All the container and blob data can be read by anonymous request. Clients can enumerate the blobs within the container by using the anonymous request out here. But if you don't want this to happen, if you only want a public access to your blobs, if you only need a public access to your blob, that's where you can say it's a blob level access, and then you can create this out. When it's telling you blob within the container can be read by using anonymous request, but the container data is not available, like the properties of the container, the metadata of the container, those are not available. So depending upon what exactly would you like to, let's say, go ahead and give the access to, depending upon that, you can either give a blob or a container level access. But when you're working with an organization, you will keep your, let's say, container in private. And the organization will expect you to go ahead and give the container in something called private and then create this out. Can I change this at a later point in time? Yes, I can. If I click on this, I'll say change access level, and I can change this into, let's say, blob and container at a later point in time as well out there as such. But I'll say cancel, I'll say test container, I'll go inside this, and if I want to upload my blobs, I'll hit the upload button and select the folder in which all the blobs are situated in. Let me go ahead get some blobs out here again. I'll take a couple of, let's say, blobs out here, and I can select all of them. I can upload it into my container. So I'm uploading about 4, let's say, blobs inside my container right now, and all these blobs will by default go into an access tier called hot. All these blobs by default will go into something called as a block blob out here, and it is going to tell you that, what is the type of the blob, what is the time in which it is created, and a couple of things out here as such. Again, in order to access this blob, access any of the blob out here, I cannot directly take the public URL. If I click on the public URL, go into my browser, I will get, such a kind of an error telling that, you cannot access the blob data. Reason being, the container is sitting in a private access level, so no anonymous access is allowed, which means that anyone cannot just come here, take your link, and access your blobs out here. This is not possible, for which you have to generate something called as a shared access signature. A shared access signature will help you control on what kind of an access you need, whether it's only read or whether it's write, whether it's update, whether it's delete, and all these things out. So I'll say, what, the person who's having this particular key or this particular shared access signature URL should only have a read permission, and I can also tell what is the start time and the end time for which this particular shared access signature is valid for. There is something called allowed IP addresses. We'll talk about it when we come to the networking. And I'll say generate the SAS token and the URL. And here you have something called the blob SAS URL. You can just copy this out, and instead of using the regular URL, you can just paste this out here, say enter, and you'll be able to see whatever is the blob over the internet. In sometimes you have a PDF file or something, the blob will just get downloaded out here onto your system, and you can go ahead and have a look at it out here as such. So this is where we are. And Trinath, I hope I've answered your question on. Sorry, Trinath, I hope I've answered your question on, let's say, what is the difference between a blob and a container access level out here. If we delete a storage account, okay, if we delete storage account is deleted, then can we use the same name again because of the global unique? Can we change the access tier? Okay, I'll come down to that. Just a second. Yes. That's
వాళ్ళు టీ
firstly.
పెట్టారు.
Shailesh, can you please go on mute, please? Do you have a question?
I have one question, Kiran.
Good, please.
What are different access tiers available? By default, you said blob is on hot tier, right?
Hmm.
So what are various tiers?
The various tiers that are available. Can you tell me what are the various tiers that are available out here while we're creating the storage account? I mean, I remember
I,
we discussed about it.
I don't remember exactly.
Okay, did you try creating a storage account at your end?
No, not yet, not yet.
Okay, please create a storage account. Tell me what is hot and what is cool. I firmly remember we discussing about what is hot and what is the cool storage account. I mean, cool tier out here. But yes, I can again discuss it when we come down to, let's say, changing the life cycle by using hot, cool, and there's something called archive. We'll talk about that.
So that defines the durability and the life of the data, right? I think hot and
It
cool.
defines, yes, the life of the data. Yes, hot and cool will
Availability and
define.
durability.
Hmm? Not the availability and durability, I would say. It would impact the life of the data, and also, let's say, the pricing structure that you need to pay whenever you, let's say, access the data or whenever you upload the data out here as such.
Okay.
Yes. Any more questions here, guys?
So what would be the SLA of this data? I mean, when it comes to availability.
For that, you will have to look at the redundancy. We talked about redundancy out here on what do you mean by LRS, GRS, RAGRS, GZRS, and all these things out. In that, we also spoke about the availability or the SLA of the data out here. Remember that?
Okay.
Do you remember? Do you recollect that?
No, actually, I missed a couple of
Okay.
sessions. Okay, I need to go back.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I would say please go back into the session and look at, let's say, what is the LRS and what kind of redundancy that it offers out there, so that you'll be able to, let's say, follow the same thing out here as such.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I have a couple of questions in the chat window. If we delete the storage account, can we reuse the name because it's a global unique name? Yes, but you'll have to wait for some time. When you delete a storage account, Microsoft reserves the name for some time, like about 15 minutes or so. And after 15 minutes, you can go ahead and, let's say, uh, recreate the same storage account with the same name. Can we change the access tier? Yes, we can change the access tier. I'll talk about that as well. Well, let's say in that particular lecture, I'll also talk about how do you change the access tiers and all these things. Right? Is it possible to decrease that particular URL? Yes, it is possible, but provided you have your own, let's say, domain. If you have your own domain, you can point it out to that. But this is the URL that actually gets in. The reason being you cannot decrease it directly is because the URL contains the key to it. But yes, if you have your own domain, if you want to point it out there, yes, you can decrease the URL out here as such. Yes, any more questions, guys? So again, I'm creating the containers, I'm uploading the blobs out here. And after uploading the blobs out there, I am going ahead generating something called as a shared access signature, and using that particular shared access signature URL. Again, if I go back into one of the blobs out here, say generate a shared access signature, this presents me a screen wherein I can give permissions or a whole list of permissions like read, add, create, and all these things out. and there is a start and there is an expiry time. I can give this particular time out here. I can increase it or I can decrease it further, shrink it further. I'll say generate SAS, copy this, let's say URL, go into my browser, paste this out, and then start, let's say, looking at this particular data. So I can look at the blob online out here as such. This can be anything. It can be a video file, it can be an audio file, it can be a document file, it can be an image file like the way that I do have out here, and etc.
So the expiry is for the access, right? Accessing the
The
data.
expiry is for the URL. Yes.
Yeah. SAS URL. Okay.
Yes. The expiry is on the SAS URL. Again, it can go up to a maximum period of 3 years. You can put this as a maximum period of 3 years out here as such. But in my case, let's say that I am putting it at 4:13 p.m. After 4:13, if I'm trying to, let's say, go ahead trying to access this particular data, it'll simply throw me an error telling that the URL is expired. So I cannot go ahead and show you the data out here as such. Yes. So, but the issue here is that the point of concern here is that, see, each and every data out here that you see, or each and every blob that you see, I have around 4 blobs out here. And for you to now access each and every blob, you need to generate an SAS here, an SAS here. I need to generate an SAS here. You need to generate an SAS here. This is just because of this, just the case when I have just 4 blobs out here. But what if I have 40 different blobs? What if I have 400 different blobs? What if I have 4,000? What if I have 400,000? You have to go into each and every blob out here, generate the SAS, send it across to the client, whoever is, let's say, interested in, let's say, looking at your data, and then they go ahead, uh, take these URLs and then, hit that particular URL over the internet. And it's a lot of, let's say, process that you need to, let's say, do out here as such. And also there is a lot of administrative work that you need to perform, and it's very difficult. Seriously, it's very difficult to maintain so many keys out here, guys. It's very difficult to maintain so many keys. Also, each and every key can have its own expiration, so you never know which blob expires when, and you'll have to manage that as well out there. So it becomes a little difficult to, let's say, go ahead and manage out these things out here. If you go ahead and generate an SAS at a blob level, what I'm doing is that I'm going ahead and generating the SAS at a blob level out here. This is the place where I'm generating the SAS. So only the individual blob can be accessed using this particular SAS out here. Now Microsoft understands this problem, and the very reason they give you a freedom to generate the SAS at a container level as well. When you do that, when you generate an SAS at a container level out here, using one particular URL or using one particular link, you will be able to see all the data that is under one particular container. Using just one link, you'll be able to see all the data that is under one particular container out here. So let's try doing that. And this is the scenario wherein I'm getting in, is that when you have, let's say, a lot of blobs under one container, and it's really hard to manage all these things out by using different links out here. So if I go back into my storage account, this is my container. So if I'll just go back into my storage account, this is my container. If I click on the container here, I'm going into individual blobs and generating the SS, instead of which I have an option on the container out here called shared access tokens. Shared access signature, shared access token, boils down to one and the same thing out here. Boils down to, let's say, giving the access to your storage account. So I can go here and I can say, okay, I can go here, I can say shared access tokens, and in here, let's see, it's again telling key one. It's telling what are the permissions. I would say, you know what, I have a read, I have the add, create, write, delete, list, and all these things out. I'll say read. I'll just start with read out here. Let's see how it works out. Again, you have the expiration time. You can set your expiration time as long as, let's say, 3 years period out here. And then I'll say generate an SAS URL. So now I have an SAS token and a URL. I'll just copy this out. Go into my browser, paste this in, and as and when I paste it in, again it's telling what the request is invalid. I'm not able to authenticate. Reason being, I'm directly hitting the container out here. Now browsers like Chrome or Internet Explorer, whichever browser that you talk about, they don't support this particular operation. They cannot list your entire blobs basically that is present inside your container. They don't really understand this particular, let's say, URL out here, which means that you cannot just use a browser to directly go ahead, take this link, paste it in the browser, and then let's say look at the content. There's something that you cannot do. The reason being, Microsoft gives you a software, or like Microsoft recommends you to go ahead and download a software called as Microsoft Storage Explorer. It's a data management software. It's a cloud data management software that Microsoft gives you to go ahead and manage the data that is there inside a storage account out here as such. Meaning you have a storage account, you can use this particular software to connect to multiple storage accounts and work at one go. Again, it's a free software out here, so you can go ahead, select the operating system that you are working on. It supports Windows, Mac, and Linux. In my case, I'm on a Windows operating system. I'll just hit the down button here, and this is going to download a software which is about 100 MB. It's an exe file that you get out here. It's called storageexplorer.exe. Just go here, say, do a double click out here and do a very simple installation. Meaning once you do a double click, it'll just tell, welcome to Microsoft Storage Explorer. How do you want to install it? Just go ahead, hit the install button. Just don't change any options. Straightforward installation. Hit next, next, and install this out. And once you install it out, you will be able to see something known as a storage or Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer like this on your system. So it's an application that is there in your system. And if I just open this out, the UI will look something like this. It'll start out by telling welcome to Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer out here. And it's telling, okay, fine, the software is loaded. What do you want to really do? Again, it has something called storage. It has something called data lake. Data lake is now deprecated, of course. But if I just expand this bar, I see what is the attached container, what is the default port, and all that stuff. And I want to now connect to this particular storage container. I have a test container here. I have a blob SAS URL. Again, I cannot directly access it over, let's say, my browser. So what I'll do is I'll come here into my Storage Explorer software. I'll click on this particular plug icon, selling open connection dialog. I'll say click on this out, and it's telling me what do you want to connect to. I'll say, what, I want to connect to, let's say, my storage account or that particular storage service. And I mean, you have multiple options out here. We'll talk about that. Let's see. You have firstly something called subscription. Then you have, do you want to attach to one particular storage account or storage service? Or it's telling, do you want a block container? Do you want a file? Do you want a queue? Do you want a table? Do you want a, what exactly that you want to connect to? What I'll do in here is that now I want to connect to one particular container that is there inside my storage account. I'm not connecting to my entire storage account out here. I am just, let's say, going ahead and connecting to one particular store or one particular container of a storage account. So what I'll do is I'll click on this particular option telling that, what, I want to connect to a blob container. And here it is telling you, how do you want to connect to? Do you want to just go ahead?
Hello.
Just a second, I'm explaining something. So I'll take the question. Please hold your questions out there. I'll come back to you. So it's telling, how do you want to connect? Do you want to sign in, or do you want to use a shared access signature, or do you have an anonymous, let's say, access level that is already allowed? In my case, it's a private. I have a shared access URL out here. So what I can do is I can simply say, click on shared access URL. This is something that I have. I'll say next. It's telling me, please go ahead, give me your shared access URL and also the display name of your container. So I'll just go back into my Azure portal back again. I have my blob shared access URL. I copy this out, come back, paste it here. And yes, I'll of course get some kind of an error out here. I'll talk about that. And then here in the display name, I can just give any display name out here. I can just say this is my sample container, or I can say this is container test or something like that. Again, display name is for your purpose, for you to understand how the container really looks like at your end, which container you're really working on. Again, if I just give a test container here, it already looks like that I have a container with this particular name that is connected. So I'll kind of address that out. But yes, this is the error that I'm stuck at. It's telling the SAS has inadequate permissions. The SAS has inadequate permissions. It only has a read and something like that. Can anyone tell me why are we getting this particular error? What am I doing wrong?
As we have selected read access,
Mm-hmm.
maybe while creating a group, their content.
Okay, I selected read access, but I only want a read access only. I don't want a
No,
write. I don't want a delete.
no, you don't have a list access, right? You have read
You
access.
don't have a list access. Why do we need a list access?
No, because you are accessing, you are trying to access the container, and within the
Container
container you have blobs,
blobs, exactly.
right?
Which means that's right, exactly right. Which means that when you want to read the blobs inside the container, you'd first have to list them. When I say list, Azure goes ahead, gets all your blobs, and checks what are all the blobs that are there inside a container. It lists them out. Firstly, it's listing them out, and then it is allowing you to go ahead and read each and everything. It's listing and then it's allowing you to read, which means that the URL that you're using needs to have adequate permissions to do both read and a list. Which means I'll come here, I'll change this URL, I'll say read plus give me a list, because I'm using a storage explorer in order to go ahead and list everything. Give me a read and a list, and I'll say generate the URL, and I'll take this URL out here, which has both a read and a list permission out here. I'll come here, paste this out. Again, this is a display name. It can be anything. It can be ABC, XYZ, whatever it is. This is for your own convention. And here it is taking test container -2, because I think I already have a couple of containers with the name called test containers attached to my storage explorer. I'll say next. I'm good with that. It's telling this is the display name. This is the resource name that you're connecting to, called test container, which is a part of this particular storage account .blob.co.windows.net. This is the SAS token that you're using. This is the resource type, which is the container that you're creating, getting, let's say, connected to, and the permission list. What exactly that you have? It's only a read and list out here. Make sure that you only connect to that resource you trust. This is the warning message it's giving me. I'll say good. I'll connect to this one out here as such. Now it's telling the connection is successfully added. And now, again, if you see, I have a couple of containers that I've created as a part of the earlier demo. Here I am now going ahead into the container, and I have all these files: sample1, sample3, 5, 6, and etc. I can go ahead, hit the download button, and I can, let's say, look at let's say this particular files in my local machine out here as such. So this is how we connect to a container. And if you want to, let's say, if you want to generate individual SAS URLs, it's going to be an administrative effort to go ahead and, let's say, manage all these things out at with one particular URL out here. It'll become very difficult to manage those things out, and that's the reason we are approaching it via a software called Storage Explorer, and using a shared access token that is generated at a container level with minimal permissions, that is read and list. We are connecting to this particular storage account service, or we are connecting to the container of a storage account, let's say, service out here, and we are listing all the data that is inside that particular container out here as such. Yes,
Kiran,
any
I
questions
have
that I
two
can take?
questions. Yeah,
Mhm.
two questions.
Okay.
So, as we have given only read and list, can we download or
Okay.
open this within the
You can
Explorer?
download it. Yes. You can download this. For example, if I click on download, and if you want to open this out within the Explorer, even that is possible. It'll use an internal application. Here it's downloading it out. So it's just transferring the data out here. So it's transferring the data. You can download this out. You can also open this out, something like this.
You cannot
It'll look
delete,
like,
right? I think
you cannot delete it. Reason being, you do not have a delete permission. So if I click on
permission.
this
Okay.
one and say delete, I'll say, okay, yes, delete this out. It'll simply say fail to start the delete, insufficient
Insufficient.
credentials.
Okay.
If you want to upload something, again, if I try to, let's say, upload file or something, I can do that
That is,
using my storage explorer.
but we don't have permissions, right? Right
You do
permissions
not
are
have a
not there.
permission, exactly. The write permission is not there on a container. So if I
Okay.
click on this file, say open this out, it'll say upload this out. Again, it'll fail, telling that, you know what, you do not have the proper credentials out here. So
So
you
this
so, mhm.
this SAS is given for generally for the external users, right? Who want to access it,
External users who want to access, is that correct?
not for the internal. Okay.
I mean, even for the internal users who have a limited access on your storage account, you can also give
Okay.
the SAS out here for them.
Okay.
Let's say
But
for
we can
example,
download the
mhm,
Kiran,
okay,
but we can download the file into our local drive, right?
you can do that. You can download the file into your local drive. You can manipulate the file in your local drive and etc. But that's only
But
limited
we
for
have
you.
given the only read permissions, right? How can we download?
Yes, but you'll still download it out. The read permission doesn't restrict you. Again, when you just take a blob out here, and we were looking at the blob out here in the browser, right? Even here, you can do a right click and download this out. It will not restrict you in downloading something. Download is allowed. Read also gives you an option
Then
to go
what
ahead
it
and
mean
download.
by read option?
Read
The
option, say
entire
for
data will
example,
be
good please.
the entire data will be downloaded into our local drive. What it mean by read option?
See, the entire data will be downloaded in your local. What do you mean by read? Again, if you open the same thing in your browser, right? The first thing your browser will do is that download it in a cache. So the first thing it has to do that it has to download it in some memory out here, some temporary memory out here, and only then you'll be able to read it. When you mean by read, it means that you cannot do any changes in that particular container. You cannot really do, let's say, an upload or a delete in that particular container out here. You can download this out, do anything with that particular data in your local. That's what read really means out here as
Okay,
such.
okay,
Okay, so just a second. Let's say take this. If I had different images, videos, PDF can in my container, see I can see all in my storage explorer. Yes, you can see all those things in your storage explorer. You can have different data types. You can see all those things inside your storage explorer out here as such. If someone else had a question that I had to take, that I don't really address while I was delivering the lecture. Someone else had a question out here. Again, this is one of the ways to access your storage account container. Meaning, again, you have multiple containers. What I'll do is I'll just detach a couple of them. I don't need a couple of them out here. Like this is created as a part of some earlier demos. So I can just do a right click, say detach, and I can remove all these things out. And yes, now I have only one thing out here, and it's now telling that you have connected to this particular container over an SAS, shared access signature, which has a limited access out here. Again, if I want to connect to a different container, I can say connect. And if I have the direct access on top of the container, meaning if you go to a container, you also have something called identity and access control or identity and access management. If I say view my access, my role is being inherited as an owner directly, let's say from a subscription. So I'm an owner at the subscription level, and this is being inherited to the, let's say, this particular container out here. But let's say you have a user who just wants to manage the data and you don't want to share these keys. You can say add a role, and you can give a role assignment. And instead of giving, let's say, an owner, contributor, or reader role, you can do much more granular access. Like you can say, just type in container. You have options like storage blob data contributor, storage blob data owner, or storage blob data reader. You can have granular access out here. which means that the user will only and only have access to the storage account and limited access out here. For example, here, if you give a storage blob data reader, it is only going ahead and giving you the access to read that particular data inside the blob containers out there. If it's a contributor, it also goes ahead and let's say gives you things like to write, to delete, and so on and so forth. And if it's an owner, it will give you let's say full access out here to generate let's say SAS keys, so on and so forth out here. So
So,
you
but these
can now
roles are
prescribe.
applicable for
Mhm.
internal users, right? Not external users. You cannot create.
You can also create a role to the external user. Why can't you create a role to the external user
No,
out here?
you create
Mhm.
a role, but how do you assign to the external user?
You can take the ID of an external user and directly give them this particular role. For example,
Now, let's say I'm an
mhm,
user who doesn't
okay,
belong to the company, right? To
that's
company
fine.
X.
You do not have to belong to a company domain, and that's
So
the
how do
reason.
you? Mhm.
Yeah, that's the reason when you create users, you have two things called create a user and invite a user. So you send
Okay.
across an invitation to the user out there.
Okay,
So
that
if
is
it's an
the
external,
way.
yes, that's a way. So for example, I don't have a user, okay? So I'm saying select member out here, and let's say that I don't have a user. I'll say xyz@gmail.com. This is a user who is not a part of my domain at all. I
Okay.
can just go ahead, send across an invitation to this particular user, and that particular user using these credentials can log into let's say Azure and can only look at that particular container out here in this case. So you can achieve a granular access level out here as such. This becomes a guest user. So I can just say any email ID out here. And in a real-time environment, let's say you're Microsoft, you're working for, let's say, or you want a client from TCS to come in. So it's tcs.com. And if this particular email ID is configured at their end, they'll get an email from Microsoft telling that, you know what, you have been invited to join this particular domain. Do you wish to join the domain? And as when you click on that link, it will tell you, okay, fine, please go ahead, register yourself with Azure. Give me a temporary password, or give me a password out here. Click take that password, and it will now associate the role with this particular ID, so that whenever you log in with that particular ID, for example, in my case, I can say connect, and I can say blob container, and I can say sign in using Azure Active Directory right now.
Okay.
Now it's going to ask me, let's say it's telling no available accounts for this resource and etc. So I need to just go ahead. It's telling no, please start by going with the subscription. So firstly, I need to let's say click on my account, add an account out here. I can say subscription. I can say next. I can say what is a cloud. I'll say Azure. I'll say next out here, and it's going ahead and it's going to go ahead give me a sign in page. I can sign in out here, and once signed in, it's going to let's say get me back out here, and it'll tell you what are all the tenants that I'm a part of. And once this is done, I can go ahead and connect to a container again. If you check this out, it's telling now signed in. It's telling these are the subscriptions basically that I have, and I'll remove this out, and it's currently is filtered out. Let's see, fine.
So you are
And
connected with Gmail account, right? No.
no, I'm not connected. Yes, I'm connected to the Gmail account, but I'm part of multiple tenants out here. So I can select which tenant I need. And this is a tenant that I need, which is, or this is a subscription that I need, which is Visual Studio Enterprise subscription.
No, this
Mhm.
user is sent by invitation, right? I think
It's an invited
that
user, yes.
invited user. Okay.
Invited user, that's correct. But this invited user has an owner role. This
Okay.
user account that I'm using has an owner
Right,
role.
right. Yeah, yeah, because you have given it. Okay.
Yes. Now I can do, okay, fine, go ahead, connect to this one. I'll say blob storage. I'll say sign in. Now it's going to tell me, yes, I see this particular user, and this is the account that I have, and what is the default directory. And in this case, I'll need to just filter out what is the default directory out here. I can say whichever is the directory ID, I can filter it out. I can say next, and then I can give the name of the let's say account, and I can give the URL of the account or URL of that particular blob container, and I can connect to it. So I don't need
So,
a SAS token. I just need the
okay.
URL out here as such. Mhm.
So it uses the SAML authentication
It
with
it does an
Azure
AD
AD.
authentication. Yes, it does. Yes, it does the Azure AD MSAL. It goes ahead and authenticates your account, generates a token for you, and then you can establish a session with say your Azure account out here as such.
Okay. So the identity can be anything. I mean, as long as they get the invite, they can get
Exactly.
authenticated with Azure AD and then they can log in and access
That's correct.
based on the permissions. Okay.
That's correct. Yes, just a second. Can we upload VHD files? No, we cannot add the VHD files directly. We need to, let's say, go ahead, and VHD files are system managed. So when you create a virtual machine, you take the backup of it. That's where you can go ahead and directly save the VHD files. You cannot directly upload the VHD files out here. Yes. Any more questions, guys? Okay, let me remove this out. I don't need this one. Cancel, and let me come back into my page. Yes. Any more questions, guys? Again, it now you can also go ahead give the access at this granular level, meaning you can go ahead and take a container and give an access directly to the container, so that you do not have to, let's say, you do not have to, let's say, generate your SAS keys again and again out here as such. Again, you also have one more option. If you have multiple containers inside your storage account, because there is another case. I started with telling that if there are multiple blobs, how do you manage it? Now I'm telling there are multiple containers, and an external client needs an access to all the multiple containers out here. Again, there are two options. You can now generate a shared access signature or a shared access token directly on the storage account level instead of the container. Now you can do a storage account, or you can also give an access directly onto the storage account. IAM, you can say he's a storage account contributor, or he or she is a storage account reader. So if I come there, if I go into my storage account, this is what I do have. I have the identity and access management where you can add someone out here, or I have an option to generate something called as a shared access signature directly at the storage account level out here. So when I do that, now it's going to ask me what kind of a service do you want to, let's say, go ahead and generate this out to. You can say it's a blob service, it's a file service, queues and tables. These are the four services that are actually supported by your storage account. I'll just say allowed resources, a service container, an object out here. Again, I just want to, let's say, give a read and a list. So I'll remove the write, delete, add, create, and all these things out. I can now go ahead, say what kind of an expiration this is, and what is the start, what is the end time out here. And I can say generate a SAS token and a connection string out here right now. So there are two things that you get. One is the key, the other is called as a connection string. We'll also look at how do you use a SAS token or a connection string out here. So for example, I'll take a connection string. It's a direct string, or it's a direct URL to connect to your storage account service. I'll just go back into the Microsoft Storage Explorer, click on this particular dialog icon again. This will tell me now what do you want to really connect to. Now I will say that I want to connect to the entire storage account service. It's not one simple container, but I want to see all the containers inside my storage account. I'll say connect. Now it's telling what do you have? Do you have a shared access URL? Do you have a connection string? Or do you have the account name and the key? I'll say, you know what, I have a connection string. I'll say next, and I'll put the connection string inside this. Now it's automatically identified that, okay, fine, the name of the storage account is something like this demo account ABC. I'll say, okay, great. I'll say next. Again, it's telling what is the display name, what is the account name, what is the blob file table queue endpoints, the SAS URL that I'm using, the key that I'm using, and also the services that I have access to, and what is the type of access that I have. Here it has a read list. You also have something called tag, delete versions, and all these things. So it's okay. I'll say connect. And now I've established a connection. So in here, in the first example, I've established a connection to the blob container, not a storage service. In the second example, I'm directly establishing a connection to the storage account. And if I now click on this particular blob containers, it's now going to tell me that, okay, fine, these are the two blob containers that you do have, which is log and which is, let's say, test container out here. And if I now go ahead, click on the test container, I will be able to see all the data that is present inside the test container, selling sample 1, 3, 4, 5, and all these things. This is this is the access level that I get. Again, it's a read in list. So I cannot come here, delete this out. Again, it'll just ask me, do you want to delete it? I'll say yes. If I try to delete it out, again, same thing. Insufficient credentials, it won't allow you to delete it out, nor it will allow you to, let's say, go and upload this out. So it completely depends upon the permissions that someone has given to you out here, such, or the role that you play, the kind of a role that is assigned to you, that drives the entire access out here as such. One more thing
So
I want you all to
which
see.
one take
Just a second.
precedence,
Just a second.
Kiran?
Just
A role
no,
or
just a second. I'll just address that question. Yes, that's a good question. I'll address that. But just a second before I go there, before I go into the Q&A, just one thing that I want you all to observe is that today we generated an SAS at the blob level, tried to connect with it over the browser, then we used an SAS at the container level. We connected using the Storage Explorer. Then we generated an SAS connected to the storage account service directly. There's one more option out here called access keys. I want you all to tell me what is the difference between a shared access signature and an access keys. This is, let's say, the assignment for today. Just go ahead, see what is an access key. If you connect using an access key, firstly, how do you connect using an access key? And if you connect using an access key, what kind of a permission that you get? Just kind of let me know that, and we'll let's say look at what is the difference between access key and the shared access signature out here as such. Yes. So one question is that which one is going to take the precedence? Meaning, the question here, if I have to put it in a very layman term, is that let's say if you have a user called X, let's say this user already has an IAM called as a reader. He's a reader out here. And this user can directly use this particular, let's say, storage account explorer or storage explorer out here, sign into it, and can read all the data. He's doing that. But if you give a shared access signature with things like read, write, and delete, read, write, list, and delete, this user right now will be able to use the shared access signature and bypass the role that he has and can go and read, write, list, and delete. So if you are thinking about the order of precedence, the shared access signature or a key will take the highest order of preference. These are there to override the existing privileges. Meaning, if you do not have any read access, it's okay. You can take the shared access signature and go ahead and, let's say, talk to your storage account. Or if you have already an access which is very minimal in level, you want to override that, that's where we will give, let's say, a shared access signature to override the same thing out there as such. Yes. Any more questions out here? First, does it answer your question? Was that your question? And does it answer that?
yeah. It answers. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Any more questions here, guys?
I mean, we also said role, right? I mean, IAM role role assigning to an user basically. So that is same as an IAM that you are saying, or
Yes, it's same as the IAM. When I'm saying role to a user, I'm just talking about the RBACs, role-based access controls out
okay,
here that is available.
okay, all right.
But again, these roles can be bypassed using these permissions out here that you have, or using these SAS tokens that you have out here as such.
So just a generic one. I mean, the roles can also be assigned not only for users, right? For also applications.
Exactly. The roles can not only be assigned to a user, it can be also assigned to an external application, like let's say a SaaS application that you have, which wants to read the data inside your storage account. You can also assign a role to that as well.
Sir,
Good, please. Good to know.
user ki, so in this case, users has a role or reader. We have access the permission read or write and sir. ఇప్పుడు సార్ తెలుగులో మాట్లాడుతున్నా కంఫర్టబుల్
Good, please. Good. No, please. Good.
ఇప్పుడు అతను యూజర్ కి రీడర్ రోల్ ఇచ్చినప్పుడు అతను డిలీట్ చేసే ఆప్షన్ కూడా ఉందా, అంటే చేయగలరా?
No, the reader option, I mean, the role called a reader will only allow you to go ahead, see what is the data, at max allow you to go ahead and download the data. That's it. You cannot delete the data that is there inside a container, nor you can delete a container, nor you can delete a storage account. You have a limited access out here as such. So as a reader, it's a very limited access.
Okay, sir. We have also access the option, sir.
When you say access, okay, can you come again please with a question? I didn't follow that. Can you please come again?
We have SAS permissions are allowed, sir. Read,
That's
write,
right.
and
That's right. So if I give you the token, meaning you are a reader in my organization, so what you are able to do, you are able to connect to that particular storage account explorer. You are able to go inside that particular storage account explorer. You are able to read these services by doing a login. But when you need additional privileges, and when someone gives you this particular shared access signature which has a power to go ahead and write, to go ahead and read, then you can connect to your storage account service not by signing in but by using the SAS, and you can go ahead and now go ahead and let's say do a read, a write, and etc. Your role doesn't come into picture. Your role doesn't now come into picture because the SAS overrides the role. So that's how it really works out right now in this case.
yes.
If we give a read, edit, and delete permission of the storage, will it get implemented to the container level also? Yes, it will get implemented to the container level also out here as such. And that's the reason we are giving it at a storage account level, so that a user will have access to read, write, delete, and etc. at the container level or at the containers that are present inside your storage account as such out here. Yes, any more questions here? So what I want you all to do today is just let me know what is the difference between a shared access signature that you see on the storage account level and what is an access key. And also tell me if you are able to see an option called access key at a container level or at the blob level out here. And this is the assignment. So please let me know what is the difference that you get, how is it, and or how is the difference, and how do you connect to a storage account using an access key. Again, click on access keys, say learn more about managing the storage. This will give you an option telling what do you mean by an access key and how is it different for something, or how is it different from something called as a shared access signature. This is something that I want you to look at, and in tomorrow's session we'll go ahead and take a deep dive into what is access key and how or what exact permissions that you're going to get with the access key, and how do you protect those and all these things out here as such.
And SAS
Mhm.
can also be applied to subscriptions, right? At the subscription level.
SAS cannot be applied at a subscription level. At a subscription level, you will have the roles coming into picture. At a subscription level, you cannot do the SAS. So if you want to generate the SAS out here, which that means that you'll have to go inside each and every individual storage account that is there inside your subscription, then generate the SAS out here. SAS cannot be done at the subscription level. So if you have a user who needs access to all the storage accounts that is present in your subscription, then you'll need to go ahead, give a role directly onto the subscription. So this is subscription. You can say identity and access management, say add a role assignment, and you can talk about storage role out here. You can say storage account reader or a storage account contributor. Assign this role directly out here so that that particular user can use a storage explorer, log into it using the AD credentials, and look at or let's say modify the data within all the storage services that are present in your under your subscription.
No, when you have given for the storage account
Mhm.
at the storage account level, there was
Mhm.
one option as a subscription on the top actually. So I thought,
Okay, let me go there. You mean this one at the
no, not
storage account
access
level?
keys.
Mhm.
Yeah, access keys. Yeah,
Okay,
and you have given at the storage account level, right? So when
correct. Now
Well,
add
you
the
get
storage
you
account
get a
level.
you get a dialog, right? I mean, dialog box
Okay.
saying that.
When you say dialog box, if I click on this one,
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
so that's what it's
That
telling you.
subscription. Yeah.
Sign into the subscription. It is not telling me to go ahead and let's say give the access key. It's asking me to sign in directly, which means that this is coming through the role. This is coming
Okay.
through the role assignment out here. This doesn't have the concept of let's say something like access keys, or this doesn't have a concept called shared access signature out here as such.
Okay. So I think the main difference is SAS uses browser and Access Keys uses the CLI, right?
You'll have to tell me that. We'll talk about that
Yeah,
on
it
what
is.
exactly is. Yes, yes. All right, so that's it from mine, guys. Please look at this difference. Please try this out. Please download the Microsoft Storage Explorer at your end. Try to connect to a container versus try to connect to a storage account. Let me know how that goes, and in tomorrow's session we'll take a deep dive on this and look at a couple of interview questions and what are real-time scenarios and what are the interview questions asked here out here as such. Until then, have a great day ahead, and we'll meet tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.